Lily Summers sat barefoot on her porch, her nightgown soaked in blood, while inside the house, her mother lay dead, and in that chilling silence, the truth about who Lily really was began to unravel. Hollow Creek had always been a quiet town. The kind of place where nothing truly bad ever seemed to happen. Nestled between rolling hills and thick woods, it was more of a community than a town. Everyone knew each other's names, birthdays, and secrets, at least they thought they did. The streets were lined with modest houses, children played freely in the yards, and the sound of wind chimes could be heard on breezy afternoons. There was a sense of safety, the kind that lulled people into believing real danger was something. That happened far away, in cities with flashing lights and late-night news stories. That illusion shattered on a cloudless Thursday morning in mid-October. At 7:14 a.m., a neighbor named Carol Jenkins saw something strange as she stepped outside to retrieve her newspaper. Across the street, on the porch of the Summers home, 12-year-old Lily Summers sat alone. She was barefoot, wearing a nightgown soaked in what looked like blood. Her hands rested on her knees, palms up, smeared red. Her face was emotionless, as if nothing around her existed. Carol froze, then rushed back inside to call the police, her voice shaking as she tried to describe what she was seeing. When the first officers arrived, they cautiously approached the porch. Lily didn't move. She didn't blink. One officer knelt beside her and asked if she was hurt. She shook her head slowly, still staring into the distance. The officers entered the house and found the body of Ava Summers, Lily's mother, in the kitchen. She was lying in a pool of blood, the side of her head crushed in. Nearby, on the floor, was a decorative iron candle holder, heavy, rusted, and clearly the weapon used. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing had been stolen. No windows were broken. The back door was locked from the inside. The scene didn't suggest a break-in or a robbery gone wrong. It was quiet, methodical, and horribly intimate. The only person known to be in the house was Lily. At 12 years old, she became the prime suspect in her mother's death. Word of the murder spread quickly. Parents clutched their children tighter. People who had known the Summers family for years were stunned. Ava had always seemed like a loving mother, strict but supportive. Lily had been shy, never the kind of child to misbehave, let alone commit an act of violence. Teachers described her as polite, intelligent, and soft-spoken. But now, those same people whispered her name with fear and confusion. She was taken into custody without resistance. She didn't ask for her mother. She didn't cry or scream. A psychiatrist was called in to assess her state of mind. The town waited for answers, but none came quickly. The shock deepened with every hour. How could a child, barely old enough to be trusted home alone, be connected to something so brutal? There were no explanations, only silence and the haunting image of Lily, still as stone, her hands stained red. The investigation into Ava Summers' murder quickly shifted focus from the crime scene to the hidden layers of the family's life. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Ava worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic by day and cleaned offices at night. She was known for being private, hard-working, and entirely devoted to her only child. Lily had no siblings, no nearby relatives, and no regular visitors. Their home was quiet, almost unnaturally so. Neighbors rarely heard noise coming from inside, and few could remember the last time they had seen both mother and daughter together in public. Detectives began by searching the house for anything that could explain what had happened. They found no drugs, no weapons apart from the candle holder, and no signs of an outside intruder. Lily's room was meticulously neat, with books organized by color and clothes folded with exact care. Nothing seemed out of place until they entered the attic. There, buried under boxes of old decorations and unused furniture, they found a collection of journals, each carefully labeled by year. Most of the journals were filled with harmless content, school notes, doodles, short stories, and typical thoughts of a young girl. but one, smaller and bound in black leather, had been hidden under a loose floorboard. It was the only one with a lock. After prying it open, investigators found page after page of disturbing entries. Lily had written about a figure she called the Shadow Man. According to her writing, this presence had been following her for years, whispering things only she could hear. She described dreams where her mother was replaced with a stranger wearing her face. She wrote of her fear that the person living with her wasn't her real mother at all. There were strange drawings too, faces with empty eyes, a girl standing in a field of fire, and a handprint made with what appeared to be red paint or something darker. One entry stood out among the rest. It was written just days before the murder. "She's lying to me again. I know she is. The shadow said she's not my mother. I believe him now. I can't let her lie anymore." The journal raised critical questions. Was Lily suffering from a mental illness? Was she experiencing delusions? Or hearing voices? Psychiatrists reviewed the entries and began a full evaluation. However, what they discovered only added to the mystery. Lily didn't fit the profile of a child experiencing psychosis. She was alert, aware, and emotionally flat, but not disconnected from reality. She answered questions clearly, understood what had happened, and showed no signs of remorse or distress. When asked about the Shadow Man, she responded only once, "He never lies." Beyond that, she said nothing. Not about the journal, the crime, or her mother. Investigators now had more questions than answers. Why did Lily believe Ava wasn't her real mother? And more importantly, was it possible that she was right? As the story unfolded, it became clear that the truth behind the blood-stained nightgown went far deeper than anyone could have imagined. As the investigation deepened, the focus shifted from Lily's mental state to her history. Detectives began combing through public records, trying to understand who Ava Summers really was and where Lily had come from. At first glance, the paperwork seemed straightforward. Ava had been a single mother since shortly after Lily's birth. There was no record of a father listed on the birth certificate, and no mention of extended family. Friends and co-workers described Ava as quiet, often avoiding questions about her past. She rarely talked about Lily's early years, claiming she wanted to protect her daughter's privacy, but something didn't sit right with the lead detective. The journals, the drawings, the claim that Ava wasn't Lily's real mother, none of it added up unless there was a secret buried somewhere in Ava's life. A court order was filed to access sealed documents related to Lily's early years. What they found unraveled the story completely. Lily Summers wasn't born Lily Summers. Her original name was Isabel Clark. Ava hadn't given birth to her, she had adopted her in a private, unofficial arrangement nearly 7 years earlier. The adoption had never gone through formal legal channels. Instead, it had been handled through a now-defunct private agency that operated in a legal grey area. Ava had found Isabel through a classified listing, paid a fee in cash, and brought her home. There were no home visits, no social worker reports, and no follow-up from any state agency. She had simply become Lily's mother. The revelation shocked even the most seasoned detectives. It raised serious questions. Why would Ava hide the adoption? Why change the child's name and identity so completely? And what had Lily remembered that led her to believe something was wrong? The team revisited old missing persons cases, looking for a child named Isabel Clark who disappeared around the same time Ava claimed to have adopted Lily. Their search led them to an unresolved case in a neighboring state. In 2012, a young couple named Matthew and Rachel Clark had been found murdered in their suburban home. Their 6-year-old daughter, Isabel, had vanished without a trace. Authorities had always assumed she had been kidnapped or killed, though no body was ever found. Now, a decade later, Lily Summers, living under a different name in a different town, was that same missing girl. The implications were staggering. Lily hadn't just lost one parent. She had lost too, in the most violent way imaginable. And now she stood accused of killing the woman who had raised her since. But the biggest question remained unanswered. Was Ava an adoptive mother trying to help a traumatized child, or someone with darker intentions? The court ordered a DNA comparison between Lily and the remains of her presumed biological parents. The match was confirmed. Lily was, without a doubt, Isabel Clarke. A girl thought lost forever had reappeared, but not as a victim. This time, she was at the center of a murder investigation, surrounded by lies and carrying secrets no child should ever have to hold. With Lily's true identity confirmed, investigators turned their attention to the cold case that had haunted authorities for over a decade. The murders of Matthew and Rachel Clarke had never made sense. There had been no forced entry into the home, no valuables taken, and no signs of a struggle. The Clarkes had been found in their living room, both struck repeatedly with a blunt object. Their daughter, Isabel, was gone. Despite nationwide searches, age-progressed posters, and countless tips, she had vanished without a trace. The case had long been considered one of the area's most tragic unsolved crimes. Now, the girl once believed to be the victim was at the center of a second violent death. Both cases were eerily similar: quiet suburban homes, blunt force trauma. No signs of forced entry, and a child left behind. In both instances, the murder weapon was found near the bodies, wiped clean except for a single set of small fingerprints. At the time, those prints hadn't matched anyone in the system. But when compared to Lily's prints now, the results came back clear. The fingerprints at the Clarke crime scene belonged to her. This revelation was devastating. Lily had not only survived the night her parents were murdered, she had been present during it, close enough to leave her fingerprints near the bodies. Investigators considered every possibility. Had she witnessed the murders and remained silent out of fear? Had she been taken by Ava afterward, either rescued or kidnapped? Or had something even more unsettling occurred? A forensic team revisited the evidence from the Clarke home. Blood spatter analysis revealed something chilling. The pattern suggested that whoever had attacked the Clarkes had been standing close enough to be struck by the blood spray. Yet none of Isabel's, Lily's, clothing from that night had ever been recovered. No blooded clothes were found. No signs of forced abduction. In fact, there had been a disturbing calmness to the scene, almost like whoever had done it had taken their time. The lead detective began to see a troubling pattern. Two families, both brutally murdered. A single child at the center of both. In both cases, the child was uninjured, unshaken, and quiet. Lily's lack of emotion wasn't just a coping mechanism. It was something else, an unsettling detachment from the horror she had lived through, or perhaps helped create. Further investigation into Ava's life added new questions. Her online activity revealed late-night searches about child behavior, missing children, and forensic evidence. She had deleted emails from an anonymous sender 2 years before her death, warning her to tell her the truth before she remembers it herself. No reply had ever been sent. It became clear Ava had known more than she ever let on. Whether she had taken Lily to protect her or to cover something up remained uncertain. But what was undeniable now was that Lily remembered far more than anyone had realized. The drawings, the journal entries, the claim that Ava wasn't her real mother, they weren't fantasy. They were fragments of a past too dark to speak aloud. And one by one, those pieces were now falling into place. Lily was no longer viewed as a simple child at the center of a tragedy. She had become something else entirely, an unsolvable puzzle wrapped in layers of silence, trauma, and fear. With the discovery of her fingerprints at both crime scenes, the case had taken a disturbing shape. Two families, years apart, found dead under similar circumstances. One child at both scenes. No injuries. No memories claimed. No confessions offered. The public, once sympathetic, now watched in shock as headlines shifted from calling her a Victim to something much darker, after her arrest, Lily was transferred to a secure juvenile psychiatric facility. A court had ruled her unfit to stand trial due to her age at the time of both crimes and her current mental state, though state was a term used loosely. Lily showed no outward signs of distress or remorse. She spoke rarely, and when she did, her words were cryptic, unsettling, or altogether meaningless. Therapists spent weeks trying to reach her. She responded with drawings of broken houses, red skies, and stick figures without faces. When asked about the drawings, she would only shrug or turn away. One drawing captured everyone's attention. It showed two houses, side by side, each with smoke pouring from the windows. A small girl stood between them, holding something in her hands. No one could tell what it was, perhaps a toy, perhaps something else. Above the figure, Lily had written a single line, "One lies, one dies." When asked what it meant, she looked up for the first time in days and whispered, "You don't understand who I am." The statement haunted those working the case. Despite endless analysis and speculation, no one could pin down Lily's motives. Some experts suggested a rare psychological disorder, possibly the result of early childhood trauma. Others theorized she may have been born without the emotional capacity to process empathy. A few even believed Ava had discovered the truth years ago and tried to keep it buried until it could no longer be hidden. The warning in Ava's deleted emails suggested she had been afraid of something or someone. Perhaps Lily had started remembering what happened that night with the Clarks. Perhaps Ava feared what those memories would bring to the surface. Or maybe she had always known the truth and lived with the weight of it in silence, with no confession, no direct evidence linking her to either murder beyond circumstantial traces and no signs of external involvement. The official investigation was closed. Authorities could not legally prosecute a child that young at the time of the first crime, and her age at the time of Ava's death left limited options under the law. She would remain in the care of the state until adulthood, monitored, evaluated, and kept away from the public. But the story of Lily Summers, once Isabel Clark, would never fade. Her name became synonymous with the question no one could answer: can evil be born, or is it made? In a world desperate for explanations, she gave none. Just silence, red-stained memories, and two families lost to shadows.